I am still buzzing from that Spurs Thunder game. My guest and I are going to break down this Knicks Cavs series in a second. There's a ton of fascinating matchup and strategy things that we're going to talk about. Remember, Real GM Radio with Wes Goldberg is part of the Real GM Radio network. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Also, check us out on YouTube. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers on our new relaunched YouTube channel, and the support is really appreciated. Also, make sure to tune into the Double Dribble with Dakhil and Dubin tomorrow for their reaction tonight to tonight's Knicks-Cavs game. But let's jump into this Spurs win over the Thunder to kick off the Western Conference Finals. There's a lot that we could talk about in this game. We are going to talk a lot about San Antonio's defense. We're going to talk about some of the adjustments that we started to see from OKC towards the end of Game 1 and more of what I would expect to see them do in Game 2. But I got to start here. And I'm watching this game and the post-game reaction and the way that Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs handled themselves. And I can't help but think, Victor Wembanyama is a lot of things on the court. And we could praise all of the things that he's doing. First overall pick, 7'5", unbelievable two-way player, the skills that he has offensively, the way that he could dominate every single possession defensively. But what I came away, like, we knew all that stuff, and I was impressed with all that stuff, and I'm going to get into all that stuff. But the main feeling I had coming out of that game was Wembanyama is making it cool to be competitive again. After the game, he admitted that he took Shai Gilgeous-Alexander winning MVP personally, and that was officially announced on Monday night as Shai won the MVP award. This was an award, remember, that Victor Wembanyama was actively campaigning for during the regular season. I call it the Chalamet effect, right? Where it's like, hey, let me speak it into existence. These are the things that I want to accomplish. And I'm not going to be afraid of admitting that. I'm going to go out and say, hey, I want these things. I want to be great. And you're seeing Wemby do that. And we've seen him do this now for months. But to get to this stage, the Western Conference Finals, against the defending champs, and say, I took it personally when the reigning MVP of the regular season last year, the reigning finals MVP for the best player on the best team, I took it personally that he won MVP and I didn't. I find that fascinating. And more important than fascinating, I find it really cool. Wemby's making it cool to be competitive again, because there's a whole generation of NBA players who kind of acted too cool for school, if we're being honest. And they accomplished a lot of things. I'm talking about LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, sort of the faces of the league who really pushed player empowerment forward. And that's an important thing for the league, and I get it. And their influence is obviously felt and has been beneficial to the players in a lot of different kinds of ways, and has obviously influenced the way that we cover the league. But what was missing from our star players, I think, was a cool factor. Just hey, I'm a competitive MFer, and all of this stuff, all of the money that we're making, all of the empowerment and the entitlements that we get as NBA stars, all of that's great. But at the end of the day, I want to kick your ass. And we've seen a lot of guys, again, too cool for school, and honestly healthy, like mentally well, right? Like I don't even mean this as a critique, but you see guys like Tim Duncan and LeBron James and Kevin Durant fail in the biggest moments and say, you know what? I'm going to live another day. I'm going to use this. I'm going to get better. It's not that big deal. It's not that big of a deal. I can feel good about the way I approach the game, and sometimes the ball doesn't always go in, and it doesn't always bounce your way. And that was, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, it feels like that has been the overwhelming kind of response to failure of, like, Giannis the other day. Not the other day. The other season is the season of disappointment. No, and kind of does this long monologue about how, about failure. And it's like, all right, boring, mentally well, good for you, but boring, obviously, and incredibly boring. Victor Wembanyama is not boring, because obviously he's thrilling on the court, but it's also his approach. He's making it okay to be competitive again. He's making it cool to be competitive again. And I think the biggest part of this is, if I were to psychoanalyze here for a second, the reason why you have a whole generation speaking about failure and not taking things as personal, oh, it's just another game. The reason why you have an entire generation talking about basketball like that is because you don't want to go out on that limb. Because once you go out on that limb, then you raise the stakes and you risk embarrassment. And embarrassment is bad for your brand. It's bad for your money-making potential. And honestly, it doesn't, like, talking to the media about this stuff doesn't really do anything for you. Like, what's the difference? I'm going to win or I'm going to lose either way. What difference does it make if I give you the quote or not? But Wemby's not thinking about it like that. He's making it cool to be competitive again. And maybe more importantly for him and his team, that competitiveness, that open, unapologetic, I want to kick your butt, I'm competitive, I took it personal that you won MVP and I didn't, I'm better than this guy. At least he believes he is. And by the way, he was in game one, far and away the best player on that court. That trickles down to the rest of the roster. Teams take on the identity of their best player more often than not. And for better or for worse. And in the case of Victor Wembanyama, it's clearly for the better. Because what I saw in game one was a team with Victor Wembanyama, who's 22 years old, whatever he is, Dylan Harper, a rookie, Stephon Castle, in his second year, never even sniffing a situation like this in his basketball life, even in college. This is just different. By the way, a rookie head coach in Mitch Johnson, who's also competitive as hell. And your most veteran players are your backup and a guy who's basically out of the rotation now in Harrison Barnes. And the other guy, De'Aaron Fox, is out with an ankle injury. And I saw that team walk into the house of the defending champs and say, not only can we beat these guys, we should beat these guys. And we're going to tell you that we should beat these guys because we're taking it personally. And we're taking it personally because our best player is taking it personally, our leader. So Wembanyama asked about whether or not he took that night personally. Said, yeah, for sure. Does not shy away from it. That's what he told reporters. He embraces the competition and the rest of his team follows his lead. So not only is that really interesting and cool for us just consuming and watching that game, and again, I am still buzzing from that game. What a game. And we're going to break it down here in a second. But the fact that he approached it that way and that the rest of his team followed him, I think is as big of a reason why the Spurs won that game as some of the strategy stuff and strategic, like all this stuff that we're about to talk about. That self-belief from a team that young, you do not see that. That is a special thing, and it comes from Wembanyama. The fact that he is making it cool to be competitive again, and he is leading his team with that competitiveness. That's the reason why the Spurs feel so together as a group. They're all in it together. There is no too cool for school. There isn't this idea of, hey, if we lose, as the team's best player, I'm still going to be making a ton of money, and I'm going to be okay. And that was sort of the overwhelming sentiment from a lot of the superstar players in the past. Again, good for you. Good mental health. Not interesting to me. Not even a little. Boring. A lot of our superstars are boring. And the league has been talking about why is the face of the league, LeBron and Steph, who are just these super polarizing figures for a lot of different kind of reasons. When they leave, who's going to be the face of the league? It's this guy. And Anthony Edwards probably also. He's also sort of embracing this. Now, the Timberwolves have some work to do. But it's really going to be this guy. Because he's interesting. Because he's willing to live with stakes. He's willing to put himself out there as a super competitor and not shy away from that. And he's not going to say, hey, no matter what, I'm going to be okay. Because he will. No matter what, he's going to be fine. He'll be a millionaire, generational wealth, all that stuff. He'll be okay. But he wants to win. And that's what fans care about. Fans don't care about player empowerment. Fans don't care about how much money these players make. They don't care. They want their best player to act like they care about the basketball game. They want their best player to live with the stakes like they do. And Wemby does that. And the rest of his team follows his lead. And by the way, the only way this works is if he delivers. And boy, does Victor Wembanyama deliver. 41 points, 24 rebounds on 56% shooting. Play after play of just mind-boggling. I mean, we could do the whole list of mind-boggling things that Wemby did in that game. He had an alley-oop with one hand that I had to rewatch. I'm like, did he only catch that? Did he put that in with one hand? Yep. Chet Holmgren was grabbing and holding the other one. So he's like, I don't care. I'm just going to put this in. By the way, Wemby doesn't complain a ton. Just going to go ahead and put that in. Lob after lob of like not even jumping because the guy's enormous. Just stuff that I'm like, what am I even watching right now? And then the creme de la creme of the highlights from Victor Wembanyama, the 28-footer at the end of the first overtime to tie the game and send it into a second overtime. It reminded me, so the play was less than a minute left in overtime, first overtime period. Wembanyama brings it up, kicks it up to Stephon Castle. Stephon Castle brings it past half court, up the left side, flips it back to Victor Wembanyama just to get into their offense. And Victor Wembanyama's like, the hell with our offense. I'm going to shoot it from right here. And right here was basically the logo in Oklahoma City. 28 feet away. Splash. Ties the game. The balls to take that shot, man. Because if that doesn't go in, that's the dumbest shot of the playoffs. Right? But it goes in. It goes in. That 7'5" guy hit a 30-footer to tie the game in his first appearance in the Western Conference Finals against the defending champs to save game one. Because if the Spurs lose this game, this is going to be... that is almost... I don't think it's as big of a deal for the Thunder to lose this game as it would have been for the Spurs to lose this game. Because the Spurs, you go in Oklahoma City, you have a chance to steal one, you got to get it. You cannot waste these opportunities against this Thunder team. The Thunder almost got this one. But Wemby hits the shot of the game. And I was immediately kind of transported back to when I was first watching Steph Curry and just like the audacity of some of the shots that he was taking. And now those shots from guards have become commonplace. But from guys who are 7 feet tall, this is still not commonplace. This is far from commonplace. So when Wemby started to go into a shot, I'm like, he is not, and then he was. And by the way, you look at all of his teammates, and they're looking around like, did he just shoot that? And the Thunder are just like, look at Alex Caruso on that play. He's like, what the hell? This guy moves the goalpost back himself and then goes right by him. Over and over and over again. It's unbelievable what this guy is doing. Unbelievable. Defensively, obviously, huge impact in this one. The Spurs basically played a base defense it was essentially sort of this hybrid zone scheme where Wemby was going to be playing off of a guy, sort of this ghost coverage type of scheme where they had him slotted on, Isaiah Hartenstein to start the game, and then he kind of would go to Caruso and some other guys as we got into the rotations. But basically always dropping back into the paint by the rim and making sure that he was either always help side at the very least, or, if the action was running his way, that he was involved in a double. And that's essentially what he was going to be doing. And it worked, right? I mean, nothing new here. This is why the Spurs were so successful against the Thunder all regular season long, is the Thunder subsist on paint touches. That is their entire offense. They're not a great three-point shooting team. They need to get into the paint, and that's where they're obviously most effective. Not tonight. They were 16 of 28 at the rim, 57% for the game at the rim. That's terrible. 21% field goal percentage on short paint jumpers, short mid-range attempts. Terrible. That is their bread and butter. That's where they're elite, and they were horrible. They were horrible from that, and that was Wemby. That was all Wemby, who, by the way, played a career-high almost 49 minutes, 48 minutes, 42 seconds in this game. Gilgeous-Alexander, 7 of 23 overall, 24 points. Yes, did get to the line. Most of that work was done later in the game, and I do think that the Thunder found a couple of things that they can work with in Game 2 that I'll talk about here in a second, but Shea overall was just not good, and in the first three quarters, really couldn't get anything going. A lot of high pickups for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to either get the ball out of his hands or deny him the ball. They trapped basically, or showed bodies at the very least, off of every ball screen that Shea ran off of. His primary defender for basically most of the night was Stephon Castle or Carter Bryant. And I thought it was really smart of Mitch Johnson to toggle those guys, make sure that one of those guys was always in the game to defend Shea. And what the Spurs have concluded is that we need to put length on Shea. Long, athletic perimeter defenders. That's what's going to work for us on Shea. We're not going to necessarily try to keep him out of the paint or off of his spots necessarily, but when he does get there, make those shots really difficult. Make him have to shoot over or around these guys. And I think my favorite defensive possession from Stephon Castle, who held Shea to 2 of 7 shooting in this game. Carter Bryant 0 for 1. SGA was 0 for 1 against Carter Bryant. That meant that in the time that Carter Bryant was defending him, Shea got off 1 shot. Carter Bryant was awesome in this game defensively. But I think my favorite defensive possession involved on Shea was early in the first quarter. Stephon Castle's on him. He goes over the screen, the Hartenstein screen. He's attached to Shea's hip. And then Shea, this is, again, I think this might have been Shea's first field goal attempt even, goes into that pump fake that we've seen him go to a million times. And when players will either bite on the pump fake and foul him, or they don't bite on it right away, Shea gets into it and then gets into the leaner, gets the shot off. It'll either go in and it gets the and one, because on that lean, he'll lean into the body of the defender and draw the foul, or stumble and kind of create, you know, the mirage of contact that way. Or teams will just or you'll see a guy just bring his hands down and just send him to the free throw line for two shots. That didn't happen. Castle goes over the screen, attaches to the hip, doesn't bite at the first pump fake, and then a simple contest on that leaner. Just puts his hands up, stays vertical, doesn't leave his feet. And SGA, clearly uncomfortable, shoots this like off-balance leaner that you could tell he's used to getting the call on, doesn't get the call, and misses high off the glass. And right away, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Of course, we've seen this in the regular season, but you want to see it, obviously, in the Western Conference Finals. And that was kind of Shea's night for most of the night. Now, OKC did have some adjustments as this game went on. I think, for the most part, they tried to just get to their bread and butter, which honestly I was kind of okay with. Maybe you make an adjustment a little bit earlier, but it's the first game. You really want to push this and see, okay, can we just do these things better? If we screen a little bit better, can we get Shea free? Does Shea need to find a rhythm after we were off for so long? Like, I get not making dramatic changes right away. And like I said, the Thunder could have won this game if not for a couple of different bounces. But eventually in the fourth quarter, they took away the ball screens and they just started having Shea go isolation. And they said, okay, we're going to flatten out our offense. We're not going to bring up another guy so that we can't so that now the Spurs can't bring two to the ball and show SGA bodies and make him go wide, keep him from going downhill and getting to his spots. So they just said, we're going to isolate whoever's on him. Just we're going to let Shea cook. And that actually started to get him into rhythm a little bit here. And then what I thought was really interesting was it felt like for most of the game, they were trying to move their actions away from Victor Wembanyama. Basically, whichever side of the floor Wemby was on, they would go the other way. And I thought in the fourth quarter, they stopped doing that. And I think the turning point in the fourth quarter was they're still trying to go away from Wemby. Wemby comes in as the help defender, doubles Shea, and then he actually blocks a step back long two from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at the end of the shot clock. Very next Thunder possession, they come down. SGA clears out to one side. He's got Devin Vassell on him. Wemby comes over for that help defense. So now you got Shea doubled. Instead of going away from those guys, he goes right into them. Isolates both of them. Gets by both of them. Goes off the glass with his left hand. Draws the foul on Wemby as they both tumble to the ground. And I think that made something click there. At that point, you started seeing Shea just go at Victor Wembanyama straight on. Because I think the Thunder realized, Mark Dagnall and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and I think correctly realized, look, when Wemby's on the court, he's on the court, and he's going to impact every possession no matter what. So there is no version of our offense where Wemby is not impacting that possession. So we're going to start there. The floor of every single one of our possessions has Wemby involved in it. So now that we know that we can't avoid Wemby, we have a decision to make. Do we try to go around Wemby and make him a help side defender? Or do we just go straight at him where instead of having Wemby plus, it's just Wemby? And while there's no good decisions here, we'd rather have just Wemby than Wemby plus. Wemby as the help side defender in a double team versus Wemby by himself. Wemby's involved either way. So we might as well just go against Wemby than 2 and 3 guys at a time. And I think that's what you saw now. All of a sudden, Shea's just getting Victor Wembanyama in isolation. They're just running straight pick and roll, getting Wemby on the switch and going to work. And I actually thought that worked. I thought that worked for Shea. It just created a little bit more space, right? Not a ton. It wasn't MVP level Shea, but it was definitely better than what Shea was in the first 3 quarters. So we saw that. Another thing that we saw was the Thunder using Shea off the ball to start those actions, especially when they went smaller to end this game with Chet at the 5. They brought in, I think the lineup was Shea, AJ Mitchell, Alex Caruso, Jalen Williams, and Chet. So they go to that lineup, which I think is going to be their go-to lineup at the end of these games. When they went there, because they have different ball handlers, whether it was Jalen Williams, who did a lot more ball handling at the end of this game, or AJ Mitchell, who obviously does his fair share of ball handling. When they went to those guys, one of those guys would initiate the offense, and they would have Shea start in the corner and come up for some different action. I know they ran an Iverson cut that the broadcast highlighted at some point in overtime. I think that they could do some other things here if we're talking about adjustments. Maybe run some Chicago action to just get him off of a pin down and then a dribble handoff so that creates a little bit more space for him. Make Victor Wembanyama have to run through screens if he's going to switch that. And I think that's probably another thing that they can do is getting Wemby to move side to side a little bit more higher up on the floor. Wemby has no problem moving side to side, but he wants to do it on the baseline. But if you can get him to move side to side high up on the floor where he has to start navigating some of those screens, that's where you really start to create some space. And then I thought, you got to be more decisive. If you create that space and you get downhill, you got to get straight to that layup. You got to hit the gas and you got to get to that layup. Even if it's not off the right foot, even if it's out of the wrong hand, you just got to get that thing up there. Because if you wait a split second, Wemby's going to catch you. And I think that's the other thing that they could do. And I think Wembanyama, by the way, is going to have this effect on teams for the rest of his career, especially in playoff series where that first game, you're like, oh yeah, the rhythm is just a little bit different. We have half a second less to get this shot off than we usually do. And I think you're going to see the Spurs during the Victor Wembanyama era have a really good record in game 1s of playoff series because teams are going to have to take a whole game to get used to sort of the new cadence and the rhythm of what they have to do offensively when Wemby's on the court on defense. And I think that's what we're going to see from the Thunder. I think they're going to be a lot more decisive in game 2. They're going to be quicker to get these shots off, hitting the gas earlier in these possessions, not being quite as methodical and not being quite as choosy, right? Like I said, if you can get this shot off now, get it off and trust your touch. And I think that's what we're going to see a lot more of in game 2. Plus, I think also what we saw from SGA at the end of this game, where they're getting into isolation on Wemby more, trying to turn him into the on-ball defender as opposed to the help defender more often. Again, no great choices, but that's the best of the bad choices. And then running Shea off some off-ball screens and going and toggling into those smaller lineups a little bit more often with one true big on the floor. I didn't think it was a good Hartenstein game really at all. He was kind of I know that he was a positive in the plus minus, but played 12 minutes, was basically a non-factor out there. Did nothing on the boards, by the way. The Thunder are going to have to win the rebounding battle. 61-40, they got out-rebounded in this game. That's not going to be good enough. The three-point variance is going to be something to watch in this series, but another thing I kind of love about this series is I don't think it matters. The Thunder shot 38%. The Spurs shot 30%. The Spurs still won the game. This ain't the Eastern Conference, where it just feels like every one of those games comes down to who wins the three-point battle. That's not the case in this series. Not necessarily. So I think that was another big one. Alex Caruso, just amazing game, 31 points off the bench. Two-way masterpiece. If the Thunder win this game, he's the story. I also don't know how many more Caruso games like this we're going to get in this series. My guess would be 0. 0 times he scores 30 points again. I mean, 8 of 14 from three-point range. He was Oklahoma City's three-point shooting in this one. Jalen Williams, it was good to see him get going. 26 points on 25 shots, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Again, got stronger as the game went on. I thought Chet, who was kind of getting punked in the first 3 quarters, also started to pick up some steam in the fourth quarter and overtime, had his best defensive possessions later in this game. So I do think the Thunder got stronger as the game went on, as they found more of their rhythm and they kind of figured out this whole Spurs rhythm. Because look, I mean, Portland, the Lakers, as banged up and injured as they were, they just haven't faced adversity yet in these playoffs. This is adversity. This is real friction, right? And so for them to need a minute to adjust, I think is real. But the fact that I can also say this about the Spurs, who also didn't deal with a ton. Now, Minnesota was obviously more physical and a little bit more of a challenge than anything the Thunder had to deal with. But the Spurs came in here with a real advantage, despite the fact that they were playing the defending champs on their home floor. And look, I don't know necessarily that Victor Wembanyama is already the best player in the league. He might be. And if you want to make that case, I cannot sit here and argue strongly against that. I just personally take a little bit longer to get there. I want to see some accomplishments. I want to see some stuff on the resume before I hand over the crown. To me, SGA, Jokic, these guys are still the best two players in the league. But Wemby's right there. And like I said, if you want to make the argument that he's the best player in the league, I'm not going to argue strongly against you. I might in my heart of hearts be there. I'm just not ready maybe to admit it. But even if Wemby isn't the best player in the NBA, he is clearly the most unsolvable. And in a playoff series, that actually might matter more.